All right, let's try this again. So for years, a handful of media institutions, I like to call the American Pravda, were the gatekeepers. They decided what Americans were allowed to see and hear and question. But now the audience has alternatives. And the people who control the narrative, they are melting down in real time. Tonight, we're going to talk about Scott Pelley, the CBS News chaos. We're going to get into some Marco Rubio goodness, election fallout, and a Texas politician who, if we were in a sane society, would be nowhere near competitive in any, he wouldn't even be elected dog catcher. So we're going to get into all of that right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where faith in God sets the standard and masculinity is not toxic. Today is Thursday, June 4th, in the year of our Lord 2026. And there hasn't been a whole lot to talk about, has there? We're going to try to get into as much of it as we can. But as always, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe and share this video, share the channel, help us to spread the word and get out from under the big tech tyrants' algorithmic chokehold. We are still growing. Thank you very much for that. Slowed down a little bit, but we're still moving forward. And we're still going to continue to march, and every click, every comment, every share, every like absolutely helps us out. And also, we're here on the SHR Media Network, but we also have the Mission Ready Men Briefing individual channel. Same briefing, same shows, same shorts, everything. So if you're not subscribed over there, please do me a favor and subscribe over there as well. We are over 1,000, so thank you all very much for that. Next goal is 1,500. We're at 1,560 plus on SHR. And so obviously we want to get to 2,000. So help us push to that goal as well. All right, let's go ahead and get right after it. So Scott Pelley, if you consume American Pravda media, even if you don't, you probably are familiar with who he is. He basically tried to take CBS hostage and failed miserably. And he uses this. Well, a lot of them use this idea that journalism is under attack, and that's kind of become code for the audience stopped buying what we're selling. And he sounds less like Walter Cronkite, I guess, and more like one of those untalented theater kids who gets mad that the audience walked out or never showed up in the first place. He and his ilk spent a decade plus calling everyone who didn't agree with them conspiracy theorists, calling politicians who had a different view than they did threats to democracy. And now they are publicly accusing each other of destroying democracy. Yeah, the media meltdown is now being covered by the media, and it's hilarious to watch. It really is. Brian Stelter, who is looking like he may be on some Ozempic or something like that these days, he actually he actually made a halfway decent point when he was on CNN with Caitlin Collins, who who got destroyed by President Trump. I believe that was earlier today. We're not going to really get a chance to cover that today, but it was it was pretty brutal. But anyway, let's check out Brian Stelter and see what he has to say about this whole debacle.
Yeah, this is like an underwater earthquake at CBS News. It's not going to be visible on TV right away, but this is bound to have many ripple effects and maybe a legal battle. Scott Pelley has been a 60 Minutes correspondent for more than 2 decades, and tonight he was fired by CBS News management one day after he erupted at a staff meeting and said that his current bosses are not qualified for their jobs. Pelley said yesterday that CBS News editor-in-chief Barry Weiss is, quote, murdering 60 Minutes by firing veteran staffers and hiring a former tech reporter named Nick Bilton to run the show. Earlier today, Pelley was called in for a meeting with Bilton and Weiss. It's unclear what happened in the meeting, but a few hours later, in fact, just about a few minutes ago, Pelley received a termination letter, and here's part of what it says. This letter from Bilton says, quote, "You hijacked my first meeting with staff to disparage me, my qualifications, and my intentions with remarkable incivility and contempt." Bilton says he tried to find a way forward, but you made clear you're not interested in such a path. The letter says Pelley has been terminated for cause, which means there will probably be a legal battle. Pelley might lawyer up and try to sue CBS. We'll see what happens. This is incredibly unusual to see a blow-up like this at a major network, with Pelley leaving and concerns about political clouds hovering over CBS News.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty concise breakdown of what happened. And the other thing is, Scott Pelley, they tried to meet with him before that meeting where he blew up, and he refused. He simply didn't want to meet with the management. Blew up at this meeting. They tried to have another meeting after that to see if they could smooth things over, and he refused that as well. So if you berate your bosses in public like that, you can expect to get fired. You can absolutely expect to get fired. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen recently. And he's not this tortured soul who, like he claims he claims he was forced to inject falsehoods and whatnot into his stories. I don't buy that for a second. I do not buy that for a second. He claims to be this, or he's trying to frame himself as this brave truth teller, speaking truth to power. And I've seen that phrase a lot on social media. Like, what does that even mean anymore? I mean, honestly. And after this blow up, he and his ilk expect people to side with them, when we've seen how corporate pressure has affected media over the past few decades. He's claimed to be frustrated. The reports are he was frustrated with CBS leadership and the editorial direction of the network. And it's like, you have manufactured narratives for your entire career. And now you're mad because someone else is not letting you manufacture those narratives anymore. Someone else is setting the narrative and you don't like it, apparently. Barry Weiss has gotten a lot of flack for the way she's handled. And I don't know a whole lot about her. As far as I know, she's not that much more to the right of any other media figure, but she's got a reputation for being fair and wanting accuracy in journalism, which I guess that kind of is more to the right of anyone, of anyone else in, or of most people in media these days. But she's been brought into this whole thing with this broader conversation about institutional American the corporate media losing the trust of the people. And the thing is, independent media has only exploded because the American Pravda, the legacy media, whatever you want to call it, they torched their own credibility. They torched their own credibility, and now they have to compete with independent media. They have to compete with podcasts. They have to compete with citizen journalists. And Barry Weiss has been charged at CBS to try and revive the credibility of that news organization. That's going to be an uphill battle. That is going to be an uphill battle, to be sure. And every major outlet, including CBS, they spent years, in some instances decades, basically becoming activists and propagandists. And that's going to take a long time if it can even be reversed. And Barry Weiss is charged with doing that at CBS. We'll see what happens. Something else Scott Pelley said, I want to make sure I mention, because how anyone can have any respect for this guy after what I'm going to read to you is mystifying to me. Absolutely mystifying to me. He's being painted as this stalwart figure in journalism who's upstanding, and his credentials are impeccable, and his integrity as a journalist is impeccable. And I read this one paragraph that was taken from his phone interview with the New York Times. And I don't really want to show it to you because you're not going to be able to see it on this screen. But in this interview, he said to the interviewer, "I have been in combat in Afghanistan. I have been in combat in Iraq. I've been in the war zone in Ukraine multiple times, risking my life and the happiness of my family because of my devotion to the broadcast." I wish they had released the audio of that. He has not served in combat anywhere. He's been reporting on camera, reading lines written by someone else, most likely, near where soldiers were in combat. That's it. He has not been in combat. And I didn't have any respect for him anyway, just based on what I've seen from him over the years. And I think I have another clip I want to show you that speaks to that. But if I did ever have any respect for him, it would have been gone just like that after reading that. I've been in combat in Afghanistan. Come on, shut up. You have not. You may have heard some gunfire in the distance. They may have made you wear a flak jacket or something like that while you were with some soldiers, but you were not in combat. And to say you were is an insult to those soldiers who were in combat, who fought and died, so that you could spew your nonsense and claim stolen valor style that you were in combat. So to me, that's all you really need to know about Scott Pelley at this point. But getting back to the larger point here, people didn't abandon the American Pravda legacy media because they've been truthful. They haven't been. They didn't abandon legacy media because they didn't want to hear the facts. Quite the opposite. Audiences left because every story started to sound like it was pre-approved by some university DEI office or some snot-nosed Biden press intern. We watched stories get buried. We watched stories get manipulated. We watched as they told us not to believe our lying eyes. We watched them advance these obvious double standards. I remember, I think it was Ali Velshi on CNN during the Summer of Love protests, riots, where he claimed it was mostly peaceful protests as an auto parts store was on fire behind him. And them telling us to trust the experts that constantly, repeatedly got it all wrong. And then when we point out that the experts, so-called, got it wrong, they told us that we were the ones who were too stupid to really understand. And now they wonder where their credibility went, where their audiences went. That's what happens. And those same people who did all of that want us to trust them even more. And will claim that Scott Pelley and his ilk are the most trustworthy voices that we should pay attention to. Some some outlets just basically unloaded on Scott Pelley. And we've talked about how he's basically engaged in stolen valor. Let's play this, because he interviewed and basically berated the ladies who ran Moms for Liberty. And Moms for Liberty is a group where they have talked about how schools and school boards are trying to indoctrinate kids with the alphabet mafia ideology and trans ideology and all this stuff. And they have these sexually explicit books in schools. And he basically, when he interviewed them, was basically mocking them. Let's take a look at that real quick.
My children have had the best teachers. I've had the greatest teachers that have influenced and impacted me. But there are rogue teachers in America's classrooms right now.
Rogue teachers.
Rogue teachers.
Parents
correct.
send their children to...
Did you catch that smug look on his face? Like, rogue teachers, come on now.
school to be educated, not indoctrinated into ideology.
What ideology are they being indoctrinated into?
Let's just say children in America cannot read.
They often dodged questions with talking points.
You're being evasive.
21%
What
of Hispanic
ideology?
students are
You're
reading on
being
grade level.
evasive. What ideology are the children being indoctrinated into? What is your fear?
I think parents' fears are realized. They're looking at these books where sexual discussions are happening with their children at younger and younger ages.
Tiffany Justice read from sexually explicit books written for older teens, but found in a few lower schools. Most people wouldn't want them in a lower school. But in a tactic of outrage politics, Moms for Liberty takes a kernel of truth and concludes these examples are not rare mistakes.
That's not journalism as far as I'm concerned. That's activism. And that whole thing is about 2.5 minutes long. And it was just him mocking them at every turn. And that's the journalism that this guy engages in. Angry, emotional. Oh, he talks about ideology. He's openly being ideological in this interview, and a host of others. I mean, that's just his MO. And he and all the rest of them, like I said, emotional, defensive, openly ideological, and in a lot of cases, just dumb. Abby Phillip, to name one. All of the harpies on The View, just dumb. And they come across as being as offended because the peasants aren't paying them any attention anymore. Legacy media's, American Pravda's biggest problem is not Trump, is not podcasts, it's not independent media, independent creators, citizen journalists. The problem that they have is that Americans have realized that they are not journalists. They are not neutral. They are not just reporting facts. They're activists. They're propagandists. Americans have, they compared what we're seeing in the headlines to what they're seeing in their daily lives, and the two don't match. And that's where the credibility has gone. Their headlines, their reporting does not match reality. And so when that happens, people are going to go elsewhere. They always quote the line, democracy dies in darkness. But suddenly they hate, not even suddenly, they hate independent media because independent media brought the flashlights. They think the problem is messaging, but the problem is that enough of us have now noticed and have spread the word that they're just terrible. They're terrible at their job. And in some cases, they're just terrible people. Speaking of terrible people, we're going to get into, we're going to talk about Talarico here in a second. But first, I want to get a word in from our sponsor. And the sponsor for today's show is Carry Girl Gear. And since summer is basically here at this point, Carry Girl Gear has the perfect gear for summer. Lightweight shirts, awesome designs, drinkware, hats, other accessories that she will absolutely love and use all season long. Perfect for beach trips, road trips, backyard cookouts, all of it. And if gift buying isn't your thing, if you don't really know what to get, just go ahead and get a gift card and let her choose. And that way you both win. So head over to carrygirl.com and get summer ready. Okay. All right, we had enough of Scott Pelley, so let's get into this other freak, James Talarico. He, again, in a sane society, he would not be anywhere near any levers of power on any level. He tries to come off as this not even pseudo, just tries to come off as this intellectual, so-called Christian, but he has detonated a couple of political landmines at this point. He is a Texas Democrat who claims to be a Christian, but everything that he says is completely and diametrically opposed to what the scriptures teach. And he is now getting hammered for comparing preborn children to parasites. And I would like to think that his campaign staff is upset and wondering what he's doing and why he's spewing this verbal diarrhea, but I suspect they all believe the same thing. And even though most people in the country don't believe that, he's saying it anyway. When you compare babies to parasites to defend your position, I'm of the opinion that your position is the problem. James Talarico has been preaching anti-Christian values and doctrine from the pulpit since he hit the scene. Now, in this one clip that we're going to show you, he argues that abortion debates are about personhood. And on that one narrow point, he's right. It is about personhood, not whether or not the preborn child is alive or not. Because the issue is that preborn child is a person. It's just in a different stage of development, the earliest stages. But let's excuse me, before we get into that, I want to show you this picture because this is absolutely hilarious. Mary Catherine Ham, she's a fairly well-known political pundit. She didn't post this picture. She posted this one of Talarico on the left and said that nothing says let's take back Texas less than this pose. But this is a side-by-side of him and Robert Francis O'Rourke, also known as Beta. And they have the same pose. Hands, I guess it's in their back pockets. But this is about as beta as you can possibly get. And I just find it absolutely hilarious that both of them, both failed Senate candidates. I don't know if it was the same photographer or they just have the same vibe. I don't know, but I just I just thought it was hilarious. But where did it go? So he's in his pulpit and he's preaching. And let's go ahead and take a look at this because there's a lot to unpack here.
Being Christian and being pro-choice are absolutely consistent because Christianity is a feminist religion. Our oldest scriptures, 3,000 years old, reject embryonic personhood while affirming female personhood. In fact, modern mass Christian opposition to abortion is a relatively new phenomenon. The Southern Baptist Convention itself was pro-choice until the 1980s. Feminist, womanist theologians are helping us remember Christianity's feminist tradition, a tradition that has been obscured and hidden by generations of men. Did they teach you in Sunday school that men and women are created?
Anyway, that's enough of that dribble. He goes on in that quote unquote sermon to talk about how the baby is not a person. The baby is just another living organism in the body, and we have millions of living cells in the body, and he uses that to make the argument that abortion is fine and that as a Christian, you shouldn't be against abortion. And of course, because he framed it in that way, he compared babies to parasites. And he has built an entire image around Christianity, a progressive form of it that isn't true Christianity. It's some progressive secularist offshoot. You can't even call it an offshoot because it's not based in anything biblical. And I'm going to prove that to you here in a little bit. Because he was on, I'm going to go ahead and prove it to you right now. He was on Joe Rogan's show not too long ago. And he said this, and you've probably heard this before, but I'm gonna break it down a little bit. But this is what he had to say.
But I say all this in context of abortion because before God comes over Mary and we have the incarnation, God asks for Mary's consent, which is
no, he doesn't. And we'll get to that, but no, he doesn't.
Remarkable. I mean, go back and read this in Luke. I mean, the angel comes down and asks Mary if this is something she wants to do.
No, he doesn't. No, he does not.
And she says, if it is God's will, let it be done. Let it be. Let it happen. So to me, that is an affirmation in one of our most central stories that creation has to be done with consent.
Okay. Now, I've heard him say this a number of times. I've read the Bible through and through twice, maybe 3 times. And I've read different books of the Bible many, many times. And I've read the Gospel of Luke many times. And so I kept hearing him say this and hearing people parrot this nonsense. And so I was like, okay, I know it's not in the New King James Version or the English Standard Version or the Amplified Version or the King James versions, translations that I have on hand. And so I looked at other different versions online, and there isn't a single translation that I've seen that says that God or the Archangel Gabriel asked her if this was something she wanted to do. The passage is Luke 1, 26 through 38. And the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God, and behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus." There was no consent asked. This was a decree. This is what will happen. And it did happen. There isn't a single translation of the Bible. And some people have, they rate different translations differently. You have word for word translations, and then you have concept translations, and none of them say in any shape or form that consent was asked. And then Mary goes on to say, "Thy will be done." There's no asking of consent. She willingly submits to his will. But progressive theology, these people keep trying to retrofit the scripture to match their ideology. And that's not how it works. But getting back to the abortion thing, it's always been about personhood. The disagreement has been who gets to decide who is a person and who isn't. Because once you acknowledge that person, then there's a moral calculation that goes into the situation. And that changes things instantly. So if you think it's just a parasite or a clump of cells, then that makes it that much easier to just say, okay, yeah, let's get rid of it. That's why the rhetoric keeps evolving. Clump of cells, tissue, fetus, which is Latin for offspring, parasite. The language keeps getting more and more clinical the further society drifts from moral clarity. Michael Knowles, I mention this book often, wrote the book Speechless: Controlling Words, Controlling Minds. And he talks about how the language has, how the left has co-opted language to make things seem less offensive, or in this case, less grisly than it actually is. And that's why we have the situation that we have now with baby murder. Nobody actually really says that human life is worthless. So they start defining when humanity actually begins. and what the definition of human actually is. And when that definition is so malleable and so fluid, you can change it to fit whatever you want. History is rife with societies that create categories of humans and determine their worth by which category they're in. Different eras, different politics, but the same mechanism. And once they determine that rights come from government, a la Tim Kaine, and not God, they become conditional. And conditional rights are not rights at all. Those are what's called privileges. And privileges can be removed at any time for any reason. And that's the dangerous part of this, because, and as Christians, we should see this for what it is immediately. I think it's what is it? Psalm 139. For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. That doesn't sound like a God who thinks a baby is just a clump of cells or a parasite. Jeremiah 1:5, God says to Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. That doesn't sound like, that sounds like God had a plan for each and every one of us. And who are we to kill that? John the Baptist, when Mary went to go visit her cousin Elizabeth, John the Baptist leaped in his mother's womb at the presence of Jesus. The further we drift away from biblical morality, the more clinical, as I said, the language becomes, and the easier it becomes to just snuff out life. And James Talarico is using this progressive Christianity to further that evil. He's probably going to survive this. This is a fairly big controversy, but he's going to be protected by the American Pravda, which is another reason why they are losing their credibility. But I digress. The chances are he's going to survive this, and he'll go on to the general election, and he'll get a lot of Democrat votes. I don't think he can win in Texas. I pray he can't. The good thing about Texas is they have a pretty good handle on their election integrity, unlike California, which we'll get to later if we have some time. But this reveals something about our culture. A society that has to convince itself that babies are comparable to parasites is a society that has basically just abandoned its conscience. Babies, children are blessings. And if you, as a society, stop recognizing that, you're going to start to treat people as burdens. And we see that. We see that with the number of abortions that are performed every day, which exceeds the death toll of 9/11 every day. And we see it with our elderly people who are often shipped off into homes that are and treated horribly, or in some cases, like up in Canada, just killed. Medical assistance in dying, they call it, because they don't value life. All right, let's move on to something a little lighter. Get a few laughs in, because Marco Rubio was in a hearing in Congress, and they tried to come after him so hard, and he just it's almost like that scene in The Matrix, once Neo realizes he's the one and Agent Smith starts going after him and he's just bored, blocking everything. That was Marco Rubio in this hearing. It was absolutely glorious to watch. They kept coming after him. And there's I haven't been able to find the audio of it or the video of it. And I don't know why, because it's a beautiful comeback. But somebody tried to frame Iran, and I don't know who it was that was questioning him. It doesn't say who was questioning him, but he was asked during the Foreign Affairs Committee hearing about Iran, saying asking if it was stronger today than it was before the war started. And he responded as only Big Marco can. He's not Little Marco anymore. He's Big Marco now. And he said they have no Navy, they have no Air Force, they have no air defenses. And the regime has lost a substantial number of its missile and drone launchers. He also said that they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, facing hyperinflation and struggling to pay its bills. Their leadership is fractured, they have hyperinflation, their currency is worthless, and they're having trouble making payroll. I guess other than that, they're doing well. I mean, I wish I could find a video of that, because that's awesome. They tried coming after him, and he was just circling and parrying and jabbing and getting his own hooks in. It was an absolute, he demolished them. He demolished them all. They tried to they tried to frame this as escalated instability that we caused. And Rubio pushed back as hard as I've seen. I mean, he is going to go down, I believe, as one of the greatest secretaries of state we've seen. Certainly the greatest I've seen in my lifetime. In my lifetime of paying attention to politics. But let's here's Jackie Rosen trying to come after him, and he just lets her have it.
You were at a party with President Trump in Miami instead of accompanying Vice President Vance to Pakistan for negotiations.
What party was I at? Secretary Rubio.
You're 100% inaccurate and 100% wrong. Here's why. Number one, the Vice President of the United States was there, and he wasn't confirmed by the Senate. He was elected by the American people. Okay? He is the second in line to the presidency of the United States. He was present. Mr. Witkoff is the president's envoy for negotiation for peace deals. Mr. Kushner is a private citizen that serves as an advisor on these functions. They were the team that we sent to Pakistan. I was not at a party. Where I was is next to the president. Because in the midst of those negotiations, I was in communications with them. And in fact, I think there is media reporting from that evening on how on multiple occasions I went into a back room, I came back out and spoke to the president and was constantly updating him. On that evening, I spoke to Mr. Kushner and our negotiating team and Mr. Witkoff on at least 6 occasions, including twice on a secure line from the phone they had access to over there. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're just
Senator
making
Rosen,
stuff up.
he has the floor.
I know your
please.
staff wrote up this cute statement for your TikTok video, but it's not true, and it's not real. That's not what happened. Okay? I'm the National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. I was co-located with the President in the midst of a high-stakes negotiation so that I could immediately inform him about events occurring halfway around the world. I was where I needed to be at that moment because we had a very capable team on the ground in Pakistan, led by the Vice President of the United States.
Thank you.
Boom. Not emotional, not just laying out the facts and making her look like Boo-Boo the Fool, because that's what she was. And there are so many, I couldn't even really, I had a hard time picking out the different ones. But I think we have to play this one because this one was just too good. I know you've probably seen it before, but it's like I said, it's just too good. We gotta play this one too. This is the one when, well, you know what? Just go ahead and watch.
Representative time has expired. Representative Salazar is recognized.
Yes. And giving contracts with no transparency is
borrow your
exactly the
time to
reason
answer?
why you shut down USAID. So practice what you preach. I yield my time.
She gets to scream now too?
Chairman,
Scream
can
and
we
shout.
take down her words?
I'll give you some time. I'll give
Yeah.
you some of my time. Let me just
Okay. But God, what kind of thing is this? What is this? You get asked questions for 5 minutes and you don't get time to answer. It's not a hearing.
I think you said clown
Like
show
a dunk
before.
tank?
I
What
don't,
is
I don't
this?
have to tell you. I don't.
I've even used their time. How can I answer the question? They don't even give me time. I've had to use their time to answer your questions.
Yes.
All right, whatever.
All right, so I don't need to tell you that in my community, the city that I represent, the city of Miami, you're one of the most illustrious representatives, and that we're very proud of you, not only the Cuban Americans, but the Hispanic Americans in my
Why is she
community.
leaving? I'm
So
going to answer her questions.
I will.
Oh, she's go. Okay, I got it. Well, thank you for coming.
And then he says, and thank you for coming. That was awesome. He's he's not playing around. He's not playing around. Marco Rubio is there are polls out there that have him as a front runner now for the nomination in 2028. I wouldn't be mad at it. I had I had my doubts when he was chosen as Secretary of State, just because I've been paying attention to him for a while, and he's been good on he had been good on some things, not so great on others. He is carrying out the president's policies with as effectively as anyone could hope for, and more effectively than I thought he could. Marco Rubio is getting results. And that's the whole thing right now. The left is arguing intentions, and the right is looking at outcomes. And when you think about it, it's the left is DEI taken to its logical conclusion on an international scale when we're talking about foreign relations. The left sees this country as illegitimate. And because they see this country as illegitimate, they see these third world countries as cultural equals. And they're not, FYI. But that's why they don't see anything wrong with importing the third world into this country. They see them as cultural equals, and it'll get them votes, which will help them secure their power and control. It's remarkable to watch. Absolutely remarkable. He summed it up in this one clip. This one clip is it's really short, but it sums up his tenure as Secretary of State and the president's intentions when it comes to this country. That's what we exist to do, to win on behalf of the American people. That's it. And that concept is completely foreign to the left, completely foreign to them. They have no conception of what that actually means, because they don't want to win for the country. They want to win for themselves. They want to win for their power and their bank account. That's it. All right, let's there were a few more clips of Rubio, but let's move on. We got about a half an hour left. And I want to talk about the election, the primaries that took place a couple days ago. California at one point was the most beautiful state in the country. California was the place that used to be known as California, was the place that everybody wanted to go. Everybody wanted to go to California. It was beautiful. The weather was great. It was a conservative state. It had been number one or near number one in education. In pretty much every metric, it was at the top. And progressive leftist governance has driven it into the absolute toilet. Now it's got the highest taxes, the most progressive leadership, an activist government that has driven out people and businesses, a celebrity political class, and two of the biggest stories out of the primary are that Steve Hilton and Spencer Pratt have all things being equal, have a really good chance at winning their elections. Spencer Pratt becoming a serious political figure at this point, that's not random. That's not happenstance. That is a signal flare. And I'm not suggesting that California is going to flip red, because even with a Republican governor and mayor of LA, if that were to happen in November, there's still the problem of a completely leftist legislature. So there's that, but at least they'd be able to stop the bleeding, so to speak. But before we get into that, there were some other surprises, not surprises, but there was one surprise, or there were some other primaries that took place. In New Jersey, the candidate for the 12th congressional district won his primary race, Democrat, who has ties to Al-Qaeda, Adam Hamawi. And of course, he was endorsed by the Squad, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and all the rest of them, Ilhan Omar. Is it any surprise that they endorsed this guy? A Muslim with ties to Al-Qaeda? How he's even eligible to run is beyond me. I don't, makes no sense. I also talked about at one point how President Trump was 118 for 118 in endorsements in this primary season. Well, one of the people that he endorsed did lose. Randy Feenstra lost his primary in Iowa. That's kind of shocking, but all things being equal, he's still 99%. And that's still pretty good. And I don't know anything about that race. I don't know anything about either candidate. Didn't pay attention to it. So I don't know what may have contributed to that. Who knows? But the real story is what happened in California. So let's go ahead and talk about that. The races are still not called, which is a problem. Steve Hilton and Xavier Becerra, they are the two front runners right now who will head to the runoff or head to the general in November. Tom Steyer is alive. He's got a mathematical long shot, depending on how the ballots shake out once they're all counted, which we'll get to that here in a second. But the fact that Hilton is even competitive is a pretty big story, especially when you consider that Chad Bianco, who is in fourth place behind Tom Steyer, is splitting the Republican vote. If he had dropped out, there's a really good chance that that Steve Hilton would be up by 10 points, or at least 5, 6, 7 points. But that's a pretty big story. He's bringing the outsider energy. He's got the anti-establishment thing going. He talks about crime and homelessness and affordability and the businesses that are fleeing, families that are leaving California. He's not doing it with the same. He's not doing it with the same panache that Spencer Pratt is doing it, but he's doing it. This is going to be something that even if they don't win, this is going to be something that could spark some momentum, because you have people leaving in such numbers that California is on track to lose anywhere from 4 to 6 congressional seats come the next census in 2030. That's a big deal. And New York is on pace to lose a couple as well. And it's not that the ideology of the electorate is changing all that much, if at all. It's not. They're just tired of the nonsense. They're tired of the homeless camps. They're tired of the open air drug markets. They're tired of seeing the fentanyl zombies in their neighborhoods and around their kids' schools. They're tired of the shootouts and all the rest of it. At some point, people stop caring about how compassionate the slogans are and start caring about whether or not the city smells like a sewer and the kids are stepping on needles and the naked homeless people are in their parks and near their schools. That's what people are mostly concerned about. And once you fix those problems, then you can start talking about compassion. But have some compassion for your citizens, the people who are actually contributing to society. But Spencer Pratt is also, if the race were to be called now, he would be advancing to the general election against Karen Bass. That is kind of shocking. Spencer Pratt, all things being equal, should become mayor of Los Angeles. And it's happening because people are just fed up. They're fed up with the decline, the crime, the activist nonsense that does nothing to solve the problems that they face on a daily basis. LA was one of the richest cities, was a beautiful place. And now it looks like a third world country. And because he's pointing this stuff out, they try to paint him as this joke candidate that brings nothing to the table. And they're talking about his lack of experience and all that. Experience got them to where they're at now. So maybe you might want to try something a little different. You don't survive this long and make this much progress as a joke candidate. You just don't. Especially in California and especially in LA. But that brings me to this caveat. The votes have not been finalized. The race has not been called. Third world countries are quicker at tabulating their votes. California has a little bit more than 39 million residents. Texas has almost 32 million, and Florida has 23.5 million. Texas and Florida's elections are called within hours of the polls closing. In fact, I think the last election in Florida, the last statewide general election, I think within like 90 minutes of the polls closing, they had all the races called, all the votes counted. And Texas, similar. It was a couple hours, maybe 3. And all those races were called. It's been almost 3 days Oh, 2 days. It's been 2 days. And the last time I looked, the governor's race was at like 60%, and the LA mayor's race was at 55% of the votes counted. How does that make any sense? How is that possible? The only reason it would take this long, and I've seen some reports that say it could take weeks, the only reason for that is to cheat. That's it. There's and as I was getting ready for the show, I came across a post that shared the latest ballot drop. And Spencer Pratt, he was up over 30%, and he's now down to 29.35%. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. And Nithya Raman, she was at 20%, and now she's at 23.42%. This does not bode well. And this feeds into the narrative that they're cheating. There is no other logical conclusion. And they say, yeah, well, they have so many mail-in ballots, it takes longer to count the mail-in ballots. They send the mail-in ballots to everyone. And people have been posting pictures of the number of ballots that they've received from children who have left home, from people who have been dead, stacks of them delivered to the same address. And the people who report it aren't going to use those ballots. But the left likes to cheat. And they have legal ballot harvesting. So they're going to take all those extraneous ballots and fill them out. And there is a very real possibility, not just that Spencer Pratt could lose the runoff, but there is a very real possibility that Nithya Raman could overtake Karen Bass. And people are saying that it's irresponsible to bring up the idea of possible shenanigans when it comes to this race. I think President Trump put out a Truth Social post to that effect, and people are all upset about it. Well, you know how you can solve that, right? It's a very simple way to solve that. Don't take days and weeks to count ballots. Like I said, third world countries that don't have anywhere near the technology that we have at our disposal get this done. We see it in Florida and Texas, the other two most populous states behind California. Get it done within hours. Stop sending these ridiculous mail-in ballots to everyone. Make people come in and vote and get it done. But if they do that, then that makes it very likely that they would lose. And Gavin Newsom made it very clear that he was going to do everything he can to make sure that that did not happen. So, I mean, all things being equal, this is the pattern of guys like Steve Hilton and Spencer Pratt coming in and gaining traction when all this stuff goes sideways. We've seen it happen with Trump. We've seen it happen with Bukele. We've seen it happening with Javier Milei. And I'm not saying that Pratt is like on that scale, but it's the same formula. The people who are running things are doing a piss poor job, and they want someone to fix it. And are they going to pick the person who claims she's going to fix it when she gets elected, even though she's already in the office? Or are they going to pick somebody who is calling out all of the nonsense, calling out all of the things that are wrong, coming up with solutions to fix all of that stuff? Are they going to pick him, or are they going to pick the person who caused all the problems in the first place? Spencer Pratt is not the disease. He is the symptom. And if he's elected, he could be at least part of the cure. I'm not saying that California is becoming conservative, because that's obviously not true. At least not yet. Because the major population centers are obviously blue and always will be. I mean, Texas is as red as it gets, but you look at San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, and Houston, and you got these blue dots in this sea of red. So, and so when you have population centers like LA and San Francisco and Sacramento, and probably a few other smaller ones, where all the blue is concentrated, it's going to take a while to overcome that. But there are enough conservatives to at least stop the bleeding for a little while. The voters who are dealing with us, they don't care about, for the most part, don't care about the ideological labels or anything like that. They want the streets safe. They want to be able to afford groceries. They want their families to be able to function normally without fear of stepping on needles, without fear of being accosted by homeless people right down the street from their house. The progressive governance that is plaguing California right now is not working. And the voters are recognizing that and questioning the results of it. And so one of the reasons why it's taking so long to vote is because they want to cheat, because they don't want to see this type of shift spread nationally. Because if that happens, that further erodes their power base. That's why it's taken so long to count these votes. And that frustration could become political momentum if, and again, I say this all the time, all things being equal, it would, but because of the Democrat machine that Spencer Pratt and Steve Hilton are fighting against, they're doing everything they can to stop that momentum before it starts. And the fact that the bluest, well, one of the bluest, probably the bluest state in America is now seeing these outsiders start to gain traction. That's getting the attention of the Democrat machine, and they got to do something to stop it. When people finally start to recognize the reality, and that reality breaks through the approved narrative, that's when things start to change. And that's when things start to change fast. So we'll see. I mean, we have Spencer Pratt has a fairly decent lead. We'll see. We'll see, but I'm not as optimistic as I was before the election. Seeing what's happening now, it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign, because Nithya Raman was the favorite. She was when it first started. She was the favorite. She was the one that everybody thought was going to be able to unseat Bass, and that Spencer Pratt had absolutely no shot. We'll see. We shall see. And it looks like the betting odds are starting to go against Pratt as well. Polymarket now says there's an 80% chance that Spencer Pratt loses. That Karen Bass, that Karen Bass just wins outright, and that Nithya Raman is the one that she ends up going up against. We'll see. That would be. Let me just say this. If that happens based on the numbers that we saw early on and what we're seeing now, if that happens, there is absolutely no way that rational people can be convinced that there was no shenanigans going on. No way. Not when you see these dumps. These vote dumps only ever go one way. That's it. They only ever go one way. Like that famous graph in 2020. Trump was ahead, that boom, a single vote drop put Biden ahead. That's what's happening here. It's yeah, there's no way a rational person looking at that could possibly believe that that everything was above board, everything was secure, and that there were no shenanigans going on. If you believe that, then I have some waterfront property to sell you in Arizona. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. Anyway, that's we're just about out of time. That's yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and leave it there, because if I start getting going on something else, we'll be here for a while. So let's just go ahead and call it. I am Big E. You have been watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network. I want to say thank you to everyone who is in chat. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the moderators who are keeping it down in chat and keeping everybody accountable. Thank you all very much for that. Here on the SHR Media Network, you can check out our great lineup. Sackhead Sean with the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Jersey Joe, the Reaver of Common Sense, every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. BZ in the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. He will be on in about a half an hour. So be sure to stick around and check him out. And on Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, you have Beer and Bullstein with Lyle Armstrong. So please like and subscribe to all these great shows, share the shows, share the channel, and pray that we continue to have a breakthrough in this election season, because we want to reach as many people as we possibly can. So that's going to do it here on the Mission Ready Men briefing. We're not just here to fill airtime, to fill stream time. We're here to equip Christian men and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. And if anything that we said here tonight matters to you, please don't just watch, share it, bring another guy into the fight. And if you want to wear what you believe in, head over to missionreadymen.com, click Shop 7 Armors, and check out all the great designs we have over there about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And while you're there, check out the SHR Media Shop. Same spot. Just click on SHR Shop and check out all the t-shirt designs for the guys in the shows, and the mug, and the hoodies, and some of the other stuff that we have there as well. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.